Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new Paragon's Guide. Today, we're going to talk about Shroud. Everyone has a strong opinion about Shroud. People tend to either love it or absolutely hate it. What gets people riled up about Shroud is the banish mechanic, which allows players to remove creatures from the board and put them in the Singularity, which is a special Shroud-only gameplay zone. And since creatures that get banished don't activate their Aftermath abilities, it is a very strong form of removal. It's like extra strong removal, and only Shroud gets access to it. So naturally, some people love this, and other people, when they're playing against it, really do not enjoy it. They do not appreciate it. They don't appreciate getting their units banished. Hey, it is what it is. Shroud is also an example, a great example, of a parallel with 3 playable Paragons. At different times in the game's history so far, we have seen all 3 Paragons, Niamh, Brand, and New Dawn. They've all taken turns being Shroud's most popular Paragon. So that's really cool. There are some classes where one of the Paragons doesn't see as much play, like maybe, the Vehicle Division for Marco or John for Augencore. But in the case of Shroud, all 3 Paragons really do have their own niche, their own place in the game's meta, and it's really nice to see it. Right now, Niamh is the most popular, and we might as well get this out of the way. Yes, it's pronounced Niamh. It's spelled Niamh. I don't know why. Don't ask me. It's not my fault. But this is Niamh, just to be crystal clear, in case anyone's learning that pronunciation for the first time right now. Right now, Niamh is most popular, but it wouldn't take much for the spotlight to shift and for Brand or a New Dawn to take the number 1 spot. So we'll see what's most popular. And even now, you can try to run other Paragons. You definitely don't have to play Niamh. You could certainly play Brand, and maybe even the New Dawn could work just right now at the time of this recording. So we'll go through all 3, and we'll kind of cover the general strategies for all 3 of those. Now, I will say, lately, Shroud has been through some hardships with nerfs to its core cards. Honored Steward and Engine Whisperer, 2 cornerstone cards for Shroud, have both seen significant nerfs. Honored Stewards can no longer banish Paragons, and Engine Whisperer can no longer reduce card costs down below 1. So that is a thing, but listen, it's okay. Shroud is still very strong. Niamh is arguably maybe tied for best deck in the game right now, so trust me, Shroud can do work right now. It's a powerhouse parallel, an excellent choice for players looking to climb the ladder. So with that said, let's do a quick review of all 3 Paragons, then we'll go over some key cards, and then we'll get into the deck lists. So first up, Brand. Brand offers a powerful mid-range playstyle thanks to the way his Aftermath ability works. His Aftermath summons all of your corrupted vision tokens to the board from your Singularity. Furthermore, Brand starts the game with one of these in the Singularity automatically, and then whenever he, as a unit, kills another unit, which, by the way, anything he damages dies immediately, whenever he does that, he turns it into a corrupted vision. So these are 4 unit tokens in your Singularity, and they all get played to the field when Brand dies. So if you're able to get 3 or 4 of those maybe stacked up, that turns into a very powerful win condition that can just happen on turn 6, turn 7. It does not take long to set this up, especially with some cards to synergize around this effect. And these tokens can even get buffed further, so they might even be 5/4, 6/4. The attack can get buffed further. It's a lot of stuff. Brand is a really fun, aggressive, tempo-based Paragon for Shroud players. We can go into this in more detail. If I read it word for word, it's a whole thing, but that basically explains it. Niamh is a lot of players' favorite Paragon to play. She's tricky to pilot. It's hard to figure out how to play her, but once you get the hang of it, she's very strong. Now, one thing about playing Niamh is you cannot include cards in your deck that cost 6 or more energy. So you're limited on cards. You can't run, for example, Demolecularize, an 8-cost card that goes into all the Brand decks, all the New Dawn decks. So It's interesting Niamh has a downside for a passive, but what is the upside? Well, for 9 mana, when you cast Niamh, she's a 6/6 battle ready and evasive unit. So she can damage anything on the board for 6 just by attacking it. That includes the opponent's face. But far beyond that, when you play her, her muster effect is crazy. For each effect, relic, and upgrade you've played this game, play a random unit from any parallel with the same cost. So for every effect and relic and upgrade, mostly effects is what matters for this. But yeah, for every effect that you play, you're summoning a copy of a creature with the same cost as that card when you play Niamh. So you're having this like build up of value, and then once you play Niamh for 9 mana later in the match, you get this huge army of 5, 7, 10, 12, who knows, the sky's the limit, like a ton of creatures. And that is a really nice guaranteed win condition every game if you just survive long enough to cast Niamh. So she's really strong, and furthermore, there's a special card that only Niamh has access to called Niamh's Dominion, and that is one of the best board clears in the game. So you're able to use that to help you survive until you get to your win condition of playing Niamh. And there's some other stuff as well with a card called Malia. We'll go over the specific cards soon. But yeah, as a Paragon with her own play style, Niamh is very, very fun. And then lastly, the New Dawn. So after you play this Paragon for 3 mana, you can activate him for 1 mana each turn. And if you do, you send him into your Singularity, and he comes back out at the start of your next turn. But whenever he comes back out, you get to pick a card from your Singularity and put it in your hand. So basically, for 1 energy a turn, at the start of the next turn, you get a card from your Singularity of your choice, which makes the New Dawn a very strong control Paragon for decks where you do banish a lot of your opponent's cards, send a lot of their cards to your Singularity, and then you get those cards into your hand and you use their own cards against them. New Dawn has been very strong at times. Right now is probably not the peak of New Dawn play, but you know, it really is only ever one balance patch away, or just someone discovering the deck list, figuring out how to pilot it. So New Dawn is quite interesting, and there are some cool new synergies with this deck. His effect, when a card leaves your Singularity, you actually get to deal damage to a random enemy for the first time each turn, and also reveal an enemy bank card randomly. So that can have interesting synergy, for example, with a card called Rummaging Researcher. We'll look at that a little bit later. In the right circumstances, New Dawn has incredible potential to win the long game, especially when it's using Demolecularize, that super strong 8 mana board clear. So let's go ahead and get into some of the specific cards. And what we'll do for this is switch over to Paralink, a website that I like to use. So give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to exit out of the game. Otherwise, it's going to make noise in the background, which is a bit distracting. And I am pulling up the Paralink site. So here we can just look at a bunch of cards, and I'm going to basically walk you through everything. There's a lot of Shroud cards. I tried not to let this be too many, but it's hard to cut it down too much. So we're going to do a real full tour of Shroud essentials here. Shroud cornerstone cards, key cards. So first off, had to start here. Demolecularize. It's an 8 energy card. It's an effect, and it's very simple. 3 words. Banish all units. So specifically units on the board. So all of your opponent's units and all of your units are all going to your Singularity, removed from play, no aftermath. And because this is a area of effect spell, it's affecting multiple units, it even gets around shield. So shielded units do not get to block this because shield only blocks targeted spells. I say spell and effect interchangeably, by the way. Super hard for me to stop saying the word spell. I'm just not even going to try, to be honest. So yeah, if I say spell, sorry about that. 3 of these usually ends up, at least 2, if not 3, in every brand deck and every New Dawn deck, because it is one of the strongest defensive effects in the game. It's very, very strong. So Demolecularize, you're going to be playing it as Shroud, and if you're playing against Shroud, you're going to have to remember at 8 energy, they have that big board clear. It's a very, meta-defining card. Now, another card that's in pretty much every Shroud deck is Singularity Steward. It's a 1 energy unit. It has 0 attack to start and 3 health to start, but more importantly is the effect. So 0/3, and then after a unit is banished on your turn, this unit gains 2 attack and 1 health. So if you play this and then you use a Life Siphon or an Erasure or another banished spell immediately, an Honored Steward, etc., this will immediately become a 2/4. After the second banish, it's a 4/5. The third banish would make it a 6/6. Now, it's only on your turn, so if the opponent is also Shroud and they banish during their turn, it doesn't buff you. It used to, and they changed it, so it's definitely got some limitations, but overall, the ability for this to ramp up is very, very powerful. Even 1 or 2 buffs on this is very strong, considering that it only costs 1 energy to cast in the first place, so even at 2/4, it's strong. At 4/5, that's insane value for 1. This is kind of like Shroud's answer to Markolian Bannerman, the Markolian 1-drop that can ramp a lot, or maybe Earthen equivalent would be to play like a Grove Guardian and then buff it with an Aurora Fungi, which gives the +2/+3 bonus. So this is Shroud's way to get that big stat line out of an early game creature, and Singularity Steward is just very, very strong. You're going to see it in a lot of decks. And speaking of early game banishing, Life Siphon is one of the ways we do it. So at a simple glance, this is an easy spell. It's just 1 energy, deal 2 damage to target unit. If that unit is destroyed, banish it instead. So put it in your Singularity. There's a little more text. So the main thing is just 2 damage, and if the unit's destroyed, it gets banished. Goes to your Singularity. That would buff the Singularity Steward, for example. It also has a little more text. If your enemy has at least 2 more units than you, this costs 1 less. So if they have 2 units and you have 0, if they have 3 and you have 1, or if it's a bigger difference than that, then this unit is 1 less, which means it costs 0. So what's really nice about this, especially going second, is that you can get a 0-cost board clear as long as you do it before you play too many units. So Life Siphon is usually going to be included as 3 copies in pretty much all Shroud decks. It's Shroud-specific removal with Banish, Synergy, and generally just a very strong card. Another really strong card, this one came out in the second set, Planetfall, and it's controversial for some players to this day. Another love it or hate it kind of design. Treacherous Scheming. It's an effect that costs 3 energy, and here's what it does. Look at the enemy's hand and put a card from it into your Singularity. If it's a unit, add a corrupted copy to your hand. And one-time reminder, if a unit is corrupted, when you play it, you take damage equal to its energy cost. So that's what the corrupted means. And then there's some other synergies that can happen with that. But the primary thing here is you take a card away from the enemy's hand. And if it's a unit, you get a copy. So, like, looking at the opponent's hand, seeing exactly what they've got to play with up until their next draws, and getting to take one of those cards away and just completely nullify it. It's the strongest counterspell style of thing in the game, letting you take away a card before they ever play it. And at 3, it's a bit slow. You got to find the right time. But if you can get ahead on the board early, or maybe set up a Baron Squire, which we'll look at a little bit later, this card just gets a ton of value. And in the later game, this really lets you control those late game matchups. If there's one card that they can use to win and you can take it away before they play it, all of a sudden you have the upper hand. Plus, getting to potentially play that card is just the extra bonus on top. So Treacherous Scheming, super, super strong. You're going to see a lot of it, and I will tell you right now, this card is very high skill because you have to make decisions quickly. You see their whole hand, you have 15 seconds to decide what to take away. You want to memorize the hand, so there's like a lot of levels to that card. Although, of course, you can take it at your own pace, even if you can't like memorize the full hand and make a perfect choice every time, that's okay. Next, from Aftermath, Eclipsed Fate. For 4 energy, banish target enemy unit or relic. So banish one of their units or their relics, and all cards in play with the same name. And put all cards with the same name in the enemy's hand, deck, and waste into your Singularity. The enemy then draws a card for any cards taken out of their hand. So basically, pick a card, a unit or a relic on the opponent's board, and remove all the copies from their game, except for the bank. So more or less, to super simplify it, you're just taking one of their cards out of the game for the rest of the game, right? So a good example of this in the current meta, if Cathari plays their relic that buffs most of their units, the high density genetic replicator, Eclipsed Fate can just target one of those and all of them are destroyed and removed. So if they have multiple on the board, it destroys them all. If it's in the hand, it's replaced. If it's in the deck, it's just banished away. Very, very strong. And a nice extra bonus for this is that you actually can remove multiple from the board. So like if your opponent has 2 copies of the same creature on the board, you can just remove them both by targeting one of them with Eclipsed Fate. So this card is actually a very important one to get good value from. It makes a big difference in a lot of matchups at higher ranks. At lower ranks, you don't have to worry about it as much. You can get away with Erasure or other banished cards. But yeah, this is a really strong one to try to craft or to add to your collection. Once you're ready at some point, you're going to see it in most lists. Told you guys there was a lot. We got a ways to go here. Let's keep pushing. Honored Steward, 4 mana, 4 attack, 4 health, which is a really nice stat line. The muster is to banish non-Paragon target enemy unit until this unit leaves the field. So you can't target a Paragon, which you used to be able to, but you target any unit and then it's removed from play until this unit leaves the field. However, if you target one of their tokens, if they generate a token, even just like a little 1/1 token or any creature that's not a card itself, if you banish one of those, it won't come back because it doesn't. When a token gets banished, it just gets destroyed. And so it can't return to play. If it's a non-token unit, it goes to your singularity, and then if it's still there, it can be brought back when this card is destroyed. So you'll learn the specifics as you play with it a little bit more, but it's very powerful removal considering that it's good tempo. It has a good stat line. So this can really help you swing the board. And even if they get the unit back eventually, if you can just get control of the board by denying them access to that unit, whatever it is you banish temporarily, like just denying them it for a few turns could be enough to swing the board in your favor. And at that point, you're making the value trades, you're controlling what's happening. So this one, it's not a 3 of anymore. You're not running 3 of it constantly like you used to. But you're probably running at least 2 in all of your decks. And for budget decks, you most likely will run 3. So Honored Steward, very strong, even if it did get a slight nerf. Void Trapper, 2 mana, 2 attack, 3 health. So a good, just standard, strong stat line for a 2-drop. Really cool artwork and a very strong effect. So when this unit deals combat damage to a non-token, non-Paragon unit, so just any unit that gets played from a card, add a corrupted copy of that unit to your hand. So basically, you get a copy of any unit that this unit fights with on the board. Also, when this unit attacks the enemy player, as long as it deals damage, you get a copy of a random unit from their hand into your hand. Now, that's really big because it gives you information about what's in their hand, as well as giving you an extra card to either bank or even potentially play. Void Trapper is really tough for the opponent because it forces them to constantly be thinking about if they play this unit, you could get a copy. So if they play like a Harf or, an Estelle's Glaive or a Wong or just one of these big value cards, you're going to get access to that. And it makes them really have to be careful about what they want to play by making them almost feel bad if they play a good card. Plus, Void Trapper is adding cards to your hand, giving you a lot of value, making sure you don't run out of cards. You always have something to bank without having to bank the cards you need to save for later. So Void Trapper, a really good one. Considering it's got a good stat line, you can just play it on turn 2 as a basic tempo play. So that's a really nice one. A newer card, actually the latest Battle Pass card, this is a 4 mana, 1 attack, 6 health, Void Keeper. So Void Trapper, now Void Keeper. 2 different cards. Whenever this unit deals damage to another unit, banish that unit. So anytime this hits one of the enemy's units, it just does 1 damage, but then it immediately banishes it. Just puts it in your singularity forever. On top of that, whenever 1 or more enemy cards is put into your singularity, you may draw a card. So whenever this deals damage to a unit and banishes it, you're also going to draw, and that draw effect will also synergize with other banishes, Erasure, Life Siphon, Honored Steward, etc. So this is fairly strong just as a powerful defense creature that's able to remove high health opponents without removing all the health, just using the banish effect. But the draw engine of getting to draw whenever you put one or more enemy cards into your singularity, that draw engine can make a huge difference. There's some games where this guy stays on the board and you're drawing 3 or 4 cards off of him over the course of a couple turns. So this is powerful in multiple ways, and the combination of effects plus the good stat line, 6 health is nice. For just 4 energy, it's a really good mid-game unit. You're going to see that in a lot of Shroud decks now. As one of the newest additions to the big Shroud cards. All right, just a few more. We're almost there. Baron Squire the Vile. 2 energy, 2 attack, 4 health. Really good stat line for a 2 energy unit, especially considering he has a strong effect as well. After you play an effect from your hand for the first time each turn, create and play a random effect with the same energy cost. So the first spell you play each turn, if it's a 1-cost spell, you get a second random 1-cost spell after that. If it's a 2-cost effect, you play a random 2-cost. 3-cost, same deal. 5, you get a 5. You play a Triumph of the Lost, you might get another crazy 5-cost spell. So Baron, he can backfire. You could cast Erasure, and then you get a Spores, a Virulent Spores when you don't want it, or, other wacky scenarios. He also is oftentimes just no impact, like the second spell you get does nothing. It's not relevant to the board. Might not even be able to cast it. But the thing is, he's a 2/4 for 2, so he's a great tempo just on the stat line alone. He has potential big value plays later in the match if you can play him with enough mana that you play him and immediately play the effect right after, so you guarantee that value. And if you play him with a 1 mana or a 3 mana spell, he can have really good value in the early game. 2 mana can be a little trickier. I don't have like a perfect memorization of every single spell that you can get for every cost with like an analysis of everything. I'm not quite on that level for Baron right now, but in general, I'd think that 1 and 3 are usually your best drops with him. But yeah, he's a good one. And whenever you just need a little more early game in a Shroud deck, you need some more units for that early game consistency. Baron, right after the Void Trappers and maybe the standard Lord Harf, Baron is a really good early game addition for any deck that wants to get on the board, which is, most of them. All right, sip my tea, keep on moving. We're doing all right here. I made a goal for myself to pace myself because it's so much information. The last video, I feel like I was trying to go so fast. It was like, sheesh. I think this one I'm doing better. So hope you're enjoying it. If you've watched this far, you're getting some serious knowledge. I'm sure that your gameplay is going to improve. Let's keep going. Adira the Ill Omen. Just a few more, by the way. I swear to God, there's so many cards for Shroud. Adira the Ill Omen. 5 mana, 2 attack, 2 health, but with a big effect. So it's battle ready and evasive. So you play it can attack right away. It ignores defender. And the effect is crazy. When this unit attacks, look at the top 3 cards of the enemy deck, play one for free, and put the other 2 into your singularity. So you can play one of the top 3 cards on the opponent's deck, and you're getting access to their cards before they do. If you're able to play one of their best cards, like a big 5-cost, 6-cost, 7-cost unit, like something big, or cast one of their big spells, maybe you play their Wong, or their Adira, or their Terramech if they're Earthen, or if you're playing against Shroud, you play Adira, attack, play their Adira, attack again, play another card. Like, this one can just go crazy. And more without going too like high roll, like super crazy scenario, you just might need something. You might need to find an erasure or a banish of some kind, or you might need some more card draw, or you might just need something. And Adira gives you 3 cards from the opponent's deck to look for it. Plus, then they still have to kill Adira, assuming you don't trade her into something. They need to kill her, otherwise she can attack next turn and do this again. She's like an effect, but with a body that lets you try to go for it a second time, So Adira, really powerful, definitely very relevant in Shroud Mirror matches and really most like slower matchups. Anything that's not against a super aggro deck. Against super aggressive decks, she can be a little bit less relevant because she can be a little too slow sometimes. to make a difference like in the early game. Malia is one of these with a bunch of text, but we can just kind of simplify it a little bit. So 3 health, 2 attack, 3 energy cost, 2 attack, 4 health. So 2/4 for 3. And the big thing is, for each damage you've dealt to yourself this game, deal 1 damage to a random enemy target. So any deck you play where you damage yourself, which some Shroud decks do that a lot. Corrupted units will damage you when you play them. Niamh's Dominion, the Niamh spell, damages you depending on how much units it clears. So there's certain ways you can do a lot of damage to yourself, as well as cards like Dark Dealings and other stuff. So Malia, especially in the Niamh deck, basically can deal all that damage back up. So every time you damage yourself throughout the match, it's like you're charging up this big Malia. And if you've done 10, 15, 20 damage to yourself, which you really can with the Niamh's Dominion spell in particular, Malia is going to be a huge potential win condition where you can just clear their board or even finish off their face, like their whole life total. And it also synergizes great with Singularity Steward because it says banish any units destroyed this way. On top of that, Malia gives you some extra card draw because when you play her, another target friendly unit becomes corrupted in addition to its other types. So you add corrupted to something, and then at the end of your turn, if you control a friendly corrupted unit, draw a card. So you can draw an extra card at the end of your turn, extra card draw, good damage, and 2/4 for 3 is an okay stat line. She's got a little health to stick around. Malia is very powerful for Niamh decks, and you might even see her played in other classes occasionally. Now, a few quick ones just to remind you of for synergies. Stabilized Shard. We're going to use this, which when you play it, you get 1 energy at the start of each turn as long as it's on the board. And then also Take It or Leave It, the new coin style card that says gain 1 energy this turn, and it costs 0. So between those two, you're going to be ramping. And what you do is with Brand or with New Dawn, not every deck will always run Shard, but the ones that do, it's like with Brand and New Dawn, you're going to be ramping to the Demolecularize and other stuff, but mostly this, right? You want to get to 8 energy faster so you can banish all units sooner to stop the opponent in case they got off to a good early game, mid game. And then with Niamh, you're actually going to ramp to her effect specifically where you play her for 9 mana and get that big board, because in some matchups you want to do that as fast as you can in a lot of matchups. So the ramp is highly relevant. Rummaging Researcher, this has extra synergy with New Dawn, but you might see it played in all 3 Paragons because it is proving to be one of the strongest draw cards in the game. It's good for drawing. It's a 3 mana with 2 attack and 5 health, and that's already a good stat line. 2/5 for 3 is not bad for a neutral, for a universal unit. Then the muster here, you may charge 2. When 1 or more bank cards are revealed, including to charge this unit, you may draw a card. So when you muster, you charge 2, flip 2 cards from your bank. That lets you draw. And then anytime either player reveals a bank card, whether they're charging or for any other reason, you get another draw. And it's not even limited to once per turn. So with New Dawn, whenever you get a card from the Singularity first time each turn, you damage a random enemy for 1, and you flip one of their banked cards randomly. So that bank card flip triggers Rummaging Researcher. The same thing goes for decks that want to charge. Maybe they're using a card called it's like Armored Defense Vehicle, I think, 2 mana, 1/4. That has a charge that flips a card. Maybe they're using the Provoked Caretaker. I think that's what it's called. The 6/6 for 3 Earthen loses Pacifist when they charge 2. That activates Rummaging Researcher. There's a variety of cards that charge in this set, and whenever the opponent does any of that, even a Tabula Rasa flipping over a unit for Cathari to copy it, you may or may not know all these interactions, but they all trigger Rummaging Researcher. So you're going to see this in a lot of decks, and especially with the extra synergy with that New Dawn effect where it can flip over the opponent's banked card. You're definitely going to see this in New Dawn. One last card to mention. You made it. Trusty Belt. This is played a lot in Brand. So as a reminder, Brand, whenever, among its many things, it says whenever this unit damages another unit, remove that unit from the game and add a 4/4 Corrupted Vision token to your Singularity. So removing any unit that it damages. And we also saw that the Void Keeper did something similar. Whenever one or more enemy cards is put in the singularity, you may draw a card. Whenever this unit deals damage to a unit, banish it. So these are both cards that can banish things just by hitting them, and they can activate other effects. The Trusty Belt synergizes with that. So first off, the upgraded unit gets +1 attack. Very nice. But the big thing is, the first time upgraded unit attacks another unit and survives on your turn, it gains a second attack this turn. So when this attacks a unit and survives, it can attack one more time that same turn. So you can use this with Brand or with Void Keeper to destroy 2 of the opponent's units on the same turn, as well as potentially you can just use it to attack one unit and then attack face. And so Trusty Belt tends to be really good with the Void Keeper and with Brand, and so you'll see this a lot of times in the Brand deck, especially with Brand himself, because it's just so powerful. If you can like put this on a Brand the turn after you play him, attack twice, maybe you trade him in all the way on the second attack so he dies, and now you have a minimum of 3 4/4 tokens. Some of them have additional attack buffs. I'm trying to simplify some of the effects as opposed to trying to give a perfect explanation, especially because this video is for players who are probably just getting, you're most likely getting a hang of this stuff. It's a lot of info, but suffice to say, it's an incredibly strong combo. Okay, guys, let's look at some deck lists. Let's look at some deck lists here just to round it out. First off, let's look at a Niamh list. And what I'm going to try to do this time, I'm not going to go through every card in the list because I realize it's a bit much. It's a bit overwhelming. It's a lot to try to say all the cards, every single one. So instead, let's look at the general arc of the list. What is the list generally doing? So this is the Niamh list. She's the one who at 9 mana can be cast and summons a huge army for you, plus she's a 6/6 battle ready. And we also have the one card we do want to make sure we remind ourselves of, Niamh's Dominion, which spends all of your remaining energy, deals that much damage to all units, yours and your opponents, and banishes all the ones that are destroyed. And then as a downside, you also lose 2 health for each unit banished this way. But it can't kill you. It can't reduce you below 1 health. So you might have to read that a few times to fully grasp it if it's the first time seeing it, but this is her big board clear. And because of this, we're able to control the board very well. And then the self-damaging aspect we use to activate Malia, who damages once randomly for each damage that you've taken from yourself, as we discussed. And then the Niamh 9 mana summon the army effect, so we're just spamming spells to clear the board while also using strong units. So the coin and the stabilized shard, our energy ramp, is very good for getting Niamh sooner, before turn 9. But we will also use them if we need to do something sooner, like maybe getting an early Void Keeper or Estelle's Glaive for board control. Maybe getting like an extra removal spell in one of the early turns, like an Erasure plus a Life Siphon, or you're going to scheme and then also cheat out a Engine Whisperer or something, right? The Whisperer could be replaced with Embedded Agent, so you could try that if you want. Embedded Agent, another really strong Shroud card. Didn't have time to review every single one, but you will see that as well, Embedded Agent. So take a look at that one if you need to remind yourself what it does. And basically, what are some extra spells we're running in here? So aside from the Dominions, we've got Brand's Expertise, which gives you some good draw. The Scheming we looked at to steal their biggest threats. We got Triumph of the Lost, which copies some of the newest cards they played that game, like the most recent cards they played. So Eclipse Fate for the banish, Erasure for the banish, Life Siphon for the banish. We got the Void Trapper to get some extra cards, the Rummaging Researcher for some draw, the Steward for some more banish abilities. Of course, the 3 Singularity Stewards, try to buff those up from all the banishing. We do have the Big Daddy Wong. If we've got the collection for it, we're able to run this. We get some extra draw, still super strong. Adira to play stuff from their deck. And it's just a ton of powerful stuff. And then all you got to do is make it to Niamh, play Niamh. And as long as they can't clear that board, you're probably going to win from there. So very, very powerful. And of course, I should have said this sooner, but all the links are in the description. All 3 deck lists that we're going to look at today. So let's look at the Brand list next. I just left the list. Here it is. We're back. Hold on. I got to keep hydrating, bro. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking doing these guides straight through, no cuts. Let's just keep going, though. I got this. I can handle it. This is why I'm the professional here. Let's go. So Brand, as we remember, he's making those tokens in the Singularity, and then when he dies, they all get summoned to create a mid-game burst. He's our Tempo, Aggro, Shroud, Paragon. And so what are we running? And by the way, guys, these lists, you might make some adjustments to all these. This is, these are baseline lists. These are not like card for card what you need to run. So just never be afraid to make adjustments, be creative, or copy what's new in the meta, whatever the top players are playing. But this is going to be fairly close for sure. So in this one, what's the difference? We got some no snitchings in here. Why did I run no snitching in Brand but not Niamh? The big thing is that Niamh has the dominions for even better removal. Brand might need no snitching to keep up with some lists. No snitching you could try with or without. Like most parallels run no snitching. This new silence card, remove all abilities from target unit. But Shroud is the least likely to run it because we do have the most removal. So this, maybe it should be in there, maybe not. But the big thing, I just got fixated on that right away. The big thing is we've got 3 demolecularizes, so we don't have Niamh's Dominion, but we do have this 8 mana, banish all units, full board clear. And we've got 2 coins, as well as, I guess we're not running the shard in this one. So we have a little less ramp for Brand, which is because Brand is a little bit less controlling. We're putting more cards into the aggressive style of the list. So with that said, we are running the Embedded Agents. It's a 1/1 evasive for 1, and it destroys any unit that it damages in combat. So this, along with the 3 Singularity Stewards, along with the 3 Life Siphons, is, a pretty small but effective early game package. And then starting on turn 2, we get to drop the bombs. We have the Hearth, the Void Trappers, and the Barons. And if we can just make it with this Baron sticking, maybe on the next turn we start using Erasure. Collateral damage gives us a little extra relic removal along with the Eclipsed Fate. So in the early game scenario against Cathari, you might be able to remove that relic, or against Earthim, potentially, if they play Altar of Gaia. You might see some other stuff as well, Logistics Mastery, etc. We've got a lot of draw in Brand, because we really want to get on the board and keep the cards flowing. So we're getting tempo on multiple counts here. We're running 3 Researchers, which we discussed a lot, and then also 2 copies of the Spectre Attack Craft, a great mid-range unit, 3/4 for 3, evasive whenever it does combat damage during your turn. You both reveal a banked enemy card and draw a card. If you actually have both of these on the board at the same time, you might even get extra draws from the card flip with the Researcher, but we'll try not to get too much in the weeds. Our 4 drops, just the standard, right? We got Honored Steward, Estelle's Glaive, Void Keeper, and then Wong and Adira for the 5s. The big thing here, like we discussed, we do have the Trusty Belts. We have 2 copies of this to synergize with Brand himself, as well as Estelle's Glaive, as well as Void Keeper, rather. Also maybe Void Trapper. Also Spectre Attack Craft. Tons of synergies for the Trusty Belt, so hopefully we get ahead early, take the board, and just win aggressively. But if it turns into a drawn-out battle, we are able to get a lot of draws, stall out the game with our powerful removals. Eclipsed Fate can get rid of the biggest threats from the opponent's deck. And then Demolecularize gives us perpetual threat of clearing the board. It's definitely one of the trickier play styles. Brand is kind of like, some people can just do it really well. Other people, it doesn't really make much sense. So if you want to learn it, find a good Brand player. Ask them to teach you the secrets of how to pilot. But this is, fairly close to the kind of list. Are you going to run exactly this many Void Keepers and Researchers and Crafts and stuff? I don't know. Maybe not, Maybe you cut down to 2 Schemings, make room for a second Void Keeper. There's a lot of things you could do here. Maybe you try not running the Snitchings. You could fit in a 3rd coin, cut the Snitchings, make room for another unit or another removal spell. Definitely room to experiment with this list. And then lastly, New Dawn is the least played of the 3 right now, but I put together a list that would at least give you an idea of the kinds of things you're going to see. And you're going to notice, by the way, these lists, they're not that different. Just a handful of cards that kind of define the different synergies that you're likely to see. But, Shroud lists, like 30 out of 40 cards are going to be about the same, regardless of Paragon, a lot of the time, at least for like the main list. So here again, we've got a no snitching. And again, maybe as Shroud, we don't need this. We could run 3 coins and cut one of these, or, the no snitchings again. But leaving that aside, the big thing here in the early game is the New Dawn's Venerated Raider. So this is a New Dawn specific unit. It's a 1/2 unit for 1, and it adds a random corrupted unit from your enemy's parallel to your hand. So, excuse me. Sorry for that. A random enemy unit, basically anything from their parallel gets added to your hand, but it's a corrupted version. This just gives you some good card advantage early. You'll bank the random unit most of the time, but that spares you from banking a different card in your hand. This lets you build up some card advantage early, and then mid-game, exact same as Brand. We have, or the 2 drops rather, exact same as Brand. We have Lord Harf, we have the 3 Void Trappers, we have the Baron Squire. And then in this one, we're still running 3 Rummaging Researchers, but we're not running the Spectre Attack Crafts because we're a little less tempo focused. Instead, we do have the Shard to get us to demolecularize faster, as well as a Drone Printer. You can play around with 2 of these or maybe not running any, but the idea with this is if the game's gonna go long and we get into a drawn-out battle, Drone Printer can be nice not only for the extra draw, but also just to keep refilling our board. So if we ever find ourselves low on units, we can just pump out 1/1 tokens and keep a little bit of a threat cooking. We've also got the 2 Void Keepers, the 1 Glaive, the 2 Stewards, so lots of good mid-game stuff. The Wong always, because he's just so good. Adira always, because she's just so good. And really, the difference between this and the Brand is we're less tempo focused. We're more focused on taking a slower, value-oriented approach. And as we build up our Singularity, we will use our Paragon to start getting free cards from the Singularity. And we'll just have a lot of options to win the long game, denying the opponent their best attacks and using them against them, right? Against Earthen, we'll take away their Terramechs and their Terras and stuff like that. Against Marco, we can take away the Victory, take away maybe their Vindicator, the new vehicle it's getting played, the 3 mana 4/3, take away some of their key cards that way. Against Cathari, we can Eclipse Fate, their Relic again. Maybe snipe away a Subjugate or some of those stronger buffing units. You guys get the point. Value play, make their life difficult, and eventually just overwhelm them with value. So New Dawn, it's the toughest one to pull off because the tempo strategies tend to be stronger in this meta, and the control strategies sometimes have a hard time keeping up. But New Dawn, there's some players talking about it. They're saying, hey, is there something here? Is New Dawn ready to cook? So we'll see. Maybe New Dawn is ready to cook. Maybe it's going to cook soon. But with that said, guys, that concludes it. That is the Shroud Aftermath Beginner's Guide, brought to you by Paragon's DAO and by me, Flux. Appreciate y'all very much for watching. Deck lists in the description, and let me know in the comments, what did you like? What did you learn from this video? Love you guys. Thank you very, very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one, okay? But that's it for this one. Flux signing out.